Welcome to Agency Ascend, the podcast where we explore the journeys and strategies of agency owners and entrepreneurs who are scaling their businesses to new heights. I'm your host, Isaac Smith, and today I'm joined by Chris Sterlacci and Mike Sterlacci. Chris Sterlacci is a managing partner of the Coverica Agency Alliance, a strategic master agency of SIAA, the fastest growing agency partnership in the USA. Chris is a proud Texan and United States Air Force vet. His passion lies in empowering entrepreneurs, helping them to achieve success through agency ownership and acquisition, which leads us to why he started this podcast. Mike Sterlacci is the chairman and former CEO of Coverica. With over 40 years' experience in the insurance business, he works as the organization's visionary and serves as a mentor to other business professionals, including those in the Alliance. He's also Chris's father and the host of the What It Takes to Lead podcast. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Excellent.
Doing great. In sunny Florida, looking at the aftermath from the most recent. Over here it was a storm surge, but I can see how people are getting tired of all this.
Were you in the thick of it, or did it pass by?
It was interesting. Yes, we were in the thick of it. This one was not a direct hit from the hurricane, so we didn't have the shears or the tearing up of the homes. But what we did have was a surge, and the water came up on our house within about 4 feet of coming into the house, and then also our rent house. But a lot of the older houses that were built in the 60s did incur water damage. So when you drive on some of the roads out here, you'll see a lot of debris put out front. And what's tough is these people just got through Ian, which wasn't that long ago. So,
well, Mike's in Florida, and Chris, you just got back from Alaska. So
yes,
that's quite a drastic pivot between the two of you.
And I will say the pivot from transitioning to Alaska back to Dallas is also pretty kind of crazy. The weather from 50 to 70 to 100. I came back just in time for the hottest days in Dallas.
Oh, well, welcome back. Welcome back. And in a little while, we'll be telling you welcome back, Mike. But
I learned something new that I didn't know before. A friend of mine had been near Chicago, and it was hot out there. And he said there's a huge difference between humidity from freshwater bodies of water and salt water. And now that he's told me that, of course, I can't forget it, because the saltwater humidity is much heavier than freshwater humidity. But anyway.
Well, there's a special relationship that Chris and Mike have together, and I think that will come out really quickly in this episode. But Chris, let's go ahead and start with you for this first episode and just talk about the Alliance and why this is so important and what you are wanting to do between the company, this podcast, and just overview.
Absolutely. I think the conversation about starting a podcast really came from a lot of my team members who were saying, hey, our member groups, our clients, our vendors really want to be able to hear, what's going on in the marketplace versus we would typically engage with them, I'd say, about twice a year from a conference standpoint or an intentional design. And then other than that, our growth coaches would be out in the field working with our member agents. So the idea kind of came from them. It's like, hey, they need to hear more from the visionaries of the organization, where we're going, where we're trending, what we're looking to accomplish, how the marketplace is transitioning. When they're out in their offices all alone, it's kind of hard to get a sense of, hey, I'm part of this big national organization. It's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that plus the idea of really tackling what makes us unique and telling our story, putting that in the marketplace. We'll get into obviously more of like the concierge model, value over quantity, helping our agents kind of navigate that, but also for those that are looking at us, what to expect and how they can get in contact with some of our other partners. That's kind of the culmination of why we were looking at doing the podcast. Another, in a short way, is like getting our narrative out there.
Yeah. Connecting with your target audience, connecting with your target client base, and also the people who rely on you.
Yes.
In a very kind of one way, but they can also reach out to you. Hey, you talked about this. I want to hear more about.
Well, then I can bring them on, right?
Yeah, exactly. So inquire at your own peril. But let's go back a little bit farther than that for people who might just be tuning in and who are wanting to understand a little bit more about what the Alliance is and what it's about and what you and Mike built. What is the value proposition of the Alliance and where did it come from?
Well, I think I can definitely go where it is today, really the last 5 years to today and forward. But I kind of want to hear from Mike. Tell me, or the audience, what got you started into joining that network? Because I remember you telling stories of you were looking for an option out there, and SIAA was the first one that really executed on all the things that you were looking for.
Sure. I started in the insurance business in 1979, kind of the Stone Age for most of the audience wasn't even born then, it seems like. But at any rate, I was a captive agent with Century Insurance. And Century Insurance, back in those days, having a captive company was more attractive than even it is today. But back in those days, you had to sell the product that they had. So after doing that for about a decade, I realized that the needs of my client base were greater than Century could handle, personal or commercial, specifically commercial, and would be glad to answer any questions that any of the captive agents have if they want to send me a note on that separate. So we became independent agents in 92. I became an independent agent in 92, started in an agency that had a lot of markets, but it wasn't run well as an agency. It didn't understand the needs of the client base very well. And so they would regularly change CSRs on commercial accounts, which is just such a bad move because each one of the CSRs would develop a relationship with a commercial account. And in commercial side, which is really something I want to push the captives and the newer ISMs to get into commercial, and we're here to help you do that. But at any rate, so that was back in 92 to 95, bought the company out, 96, owned it. And then about 2000, I'd heard about the concept of an SIAA model, and it was really the first. And I loved the idea of banding together with other independent agents and other master agents throughout the country so that we could go to the carriers and have a stronger voice. Back in those days, you had Marsh McLennan, which is still huge, and then Brown & Brown and Gallagher. And they had multiple offices and they had all kinds of resources. And here I am, an agency just kind of flailing out there, trying to do best I can and get contracts when I can. And what I realized early on, agency ownership, is the carriers have a voracious appetite for new business. And if you can't demonstrate that you're part of the future, even if you had a profitable agency that's static or it's not growing enough, they'll cancel your contract. So the concept of banding together so that optically, from the carrier's perspective, we're one unified voice. But more important to me was that each one could maintain their own sovereignty. So each agency still stays independent. We're working together as long as it works. And then if it doesn't work anymore, any particular agency can sell or get out or whatever. But it was a unique proposition. And so I jumped into it. And then over the next 20 years, continued to grow both the retail agency as well as the network. And that's when the succession planning effort took place, in which case Chris is buying me out of the Alliance. And so he's now taking the trajectory of the Alliance with the ISMs in a different direction. And by the way, Coverica is the first and the largest ISM that the Alliance has. So that brings us to today.
Yeah, it's watching that journey unfold, obviously, as I was growing up was honestly, I didn't really pay much attention until after my military career, so I was playing catch up from that point on. But after I got some sense drilled into me, learning the uniqueness of the model, how it caters towards really more of the business-to-business idea, which I favored after getting out, working with the government and whatnot, being able to see all the things that my dad had instituted and really pushed. And I know we'll get into some of his four guiding principles and how he looks and tackles business, as well as his ethos in dealing with them. And that's where SIAA seemed to accomplish most all of those. But yeah, got to see him struggle with that, building it. I think at the time I joined, they were roughly 50 members, give or take, phenomenally led by Jennifer Duncan Pierce, as well as a few others over the history. So they had gotten the ground fertilized, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I joined actually Ashley Fox, who was a former Allied rep. She and I were the recruiters on staff going out and growing this network. And what we had found was that we weren't really executing on a macro level all the unique benefits that SIA had and available, or it was really set up more of a price model where if you want this service, you pay this fee. If you want this additional service, you pay this additional fee. Which is a great model, and it definitely works. I think how, after being in the military, working mostly with more of like a platform type model, where, hey, you join us and you're going to get access to all this, and really standing by our products and saying if it's beneficial, we're going to give it to them, and it's going to help their agencies grow, which then in turn helps us because we are a growth model. We really only win once our members win.
Mm.
So that idea of switching it over to a platform model to where everything's all inclusive, they get access to all those resources, and it's really, okay, what's your journey going to be? Let's talk about that. If you want to build your agency to grow to sell, if you want to build it to basically be a lifestyle agency, and or if you want to diversify into other marketplace, we're here for that. So identifying that journey and course of action for them really meant that we had to up our game to bring in support teams like, which I'm sure you'll hear from Mindy and or Stephanie, who's our growth coaches. They go out there and really have a fundamental understanding of the whole of the agency that they're working with. And that makes a huge difference when you're navigating or you're doing the budgetary forecast or looking at, okay, where should I spend my time, energy, and effort that's going to have the greatest payoff? Or what's coming down from the carriers? This is world of craziness. It's a hard market. What do we need to do? All right, here's the 5 or 3 things that you need to be working with this particular market. So giving them that guidance. Jennifer used to say, when she brought people on, she said, they would ask for direction, things like that. And she said, well, you are now an independent agent. So you have options. Whereas before you were a captive, you had no options. Now you have options, which I really think getting them to understand that is a pivotal point at first. Now you have options. And oh, by the way, we've been here. We have 96 others that are just here in the DFW. You can talk to them. Here's what we've seen to be successful. You may try something that we have seen not be successful, but you're going to go in with a ton of data and a ton of information so you're not alone in that research. So I'd say that's, if I answered your question properly.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite things you've talked about in our past conversations was that community aspect, almost as if you're the Karate Kid and you find the Mr. Miyagi, and then eventually you become Mr. Miyagi and you're expected to teach the next Karate Kid.
Yeah.
At what point does it make sense for someone to join the Alliance? At what point have you grown to a space where you are ready and you're the right fit for what it is you guys are doing?
Sure. I would say it is somewhat subjective in a case by case, but typically captives that have built agencies in that channel that are looking at going independent, I'd say, once you've grown to say 100,000 in revenue on the captive side, is generally when I see most of them looking to jump ship and or look for other avenues beyond just that one carrier offering.
I think another thing to add into it would be that a lot of captives are figuring out that their host company has decided that model has gotten too big, too archaic, and too expensive. And so it's really, I would strongly urge people thinking about the future. If you can sell, the biggest challenge for a captive to become an independent agent is you no longer have the brand. What you have is yourself. And so that's the challenge, and that's where we come in and help a lot. But make no mistake that when Nationwide is dumped all their agents and Liberty dumped all their captive agents, it's because of a cost. So the trajectory into the future with AI is such that the captive model is going to be either too expensive, or they're going to change how it's compensating the agent to minimize their ability to earn. Whereas as an independent agent, you can choose the markets, you can choose what you want to sell, when you want to sell it, who you want to sell it to, and the type clientele you have. And the alliance is in a position to give you examples of all the above, as opposed to figuring it all out by yourself. So so deciding when the pivotal time is to go. It's when you're ready for the next level and challenge in your life.
Yeah, and I would say that my answers or looks are going to be more towards what we've seen generally. So the captives models are typically phenomenal at getting you an introduction into insurance. Mm-hmm. So we're not the option that says, hey, if you don't know anything on how to build a business or don't know anything about how to sell, that's not what we're here for. We're here for those that have been limited in their abilities, knows how to navigate, maybe not as sophisticated in that because you get into politics with carriers and everything, but really setting them up for success to build a company. And to say, okay, here are the foundational blocks that you're going to need to have. And what's your management system going to look like? What's your which contracts are you going to first go after? What's your marketing plan?
I think you're making a good point, Chris, because when I first got into the business back in 79, I wanted to get into insurance, but I had to learn it. And so to your point, I went to work for a captive. It was Century Insurance, because they taught me sales, they taught me product, and they gave me information. And once I learned on it, so it was years later that I realized it was actually restricting me. Now, a lot of the captives that we've talked to over the years, they got very comfortable in making the system work within a captive environment. Mm-hmm. And for those people, it's been very difficult for them to make the transition because that's all they knew was that captive. But make no mistake, the carriers are, specifically the captive carriers. I mean, Geico has now opened up, which blows my mind, to where the independent agents are now selling their product, which used to be exclusive. So you're going to see more and more of that. And so with the alliance that Chris is running, you're now in a position to really take that and run with it. But he is correct. It's more of you already figured out you know how to sell. You already figured out you understand insurance and how to leverage it, because it's the renewal income from the policies that's where you make your money, is holding on to it. And you can do that as an independent agent, whereas as a captive, if they decide to take a 50% rate increase, you're out of luck. But as an independent agent, you do have some other markets. Even in a hard market, you still have more options. I just wanted to add that in with what you're saying, Chris.
Yeah, no, it's a valid point. So that's kind of what we're looking at from a captive experience. I would say that typically any role that you start, it takes 2 years to really kind of understand. I have seen some that got into the captive model within a year. They're already ready to jump ship. So there are exceptions to that, but I'd say by and large, it's usually after 3 years, 100,000 in revenue that they build to, that they start contemplating what's that next stage look like. As far as the independent, I segment between captive and independent. As far as an independent agent, it's those that are going after preferred business. That means a lot of the partner carriers and partner relationships that we have are your standard to preferred types of clients and risks. Again, commercial, personal, combination of the two. That's typically what we're looking for. That's what we specialize in. I'm not your one-stop shop for life and health. I may have some recommendations and some relationships therein, but that's typically what we're going for. Somebody with, say, 3 to 5 years of independent experience that has built a model. And honestly, I work with agents all over the board on that side and help them navigate. If I'm not the right fit for them, I'm going to point them in the right direction. Mm-hmm. I feel that we're strongly one of the best players from a captive standpoint. Most of our competitors typically look for agencies that are north of $1 million in premium or production, rather, before they look at talking to anybody. Then they typically don't deal with captives. So they're only looking at the independents. So that's where we can bridge that.
Well, you have the model that really helps people get into
Yes.
commercial, because when you say to an independent agent that's been captive or primarily captive, or they'll sell some commercial insurance because the captive they work with has some real competitive products in that captive environment. But what you do that's very strong is that you'll help people learn the commercial world. And to the point that we have said, you can't get something that's too complex. I mean, the largest ISM, which is Coverica, I mean, we have people there, certified risk managers that have helped people set up captives all over the board. So you can't get into too deep of water. Now, what will happen is that you'll be able to talk to with Chris and navigate, is it worth it? Because some of them you don't want to go after. You don't want to go after a public school system, as an example, or if you get into governmental work where they have a lot of bonds and stuff, it can get real deep, real thick. But if you have a contact that will go with you, then we can help you even in that through the markets, primarily the ones that they already have, Travelers, Liberty, because they're all huge agency carriers.
Yeah, and I would add, because I know this is going to become probably an episode in of itself, John Sutter, who joined the retail as one of those certified risk managers, he has experience setting up captives or programs in the past, and I know there's a huge interest to find somebody that has done it, not once but multiple times, and understands that ground. It's not something that's very well taught or understood in our industry, and so to find somebody that has. Now, Mike, I know you've done or been a part of some of those as well, and developing your own captive. So just being able to show that to prospective members or existing members, how to navigate that. Or if you think you have this idea, let's talk about it. Being open to have that conversation.
Right.
And like you've already talked about, a win in one department is going to be a win for everyone else who comes after that, who also wants that. So instead of just one Mike Sterlacci or one Chris Sterlacci, you end up having an army of people who have learned how to sell, been there, done that, and come up with these different ideas. I think it's a beautiful market. I wish there was something like that in podcasting. it'd be a lovely thing to tap into. But one of the things I enjoy about these podcasts, and I know, Mike, a lot of these topics you've actually hit on in your podcast, What It Takes to Lead. I'll actually link one of the earlier episodes we did in the show notes below, where you talked about the concierge model and the future of the industry. But pertaining to the Alliance specifically, do you guys have any home run success stories that have come out of this model that you're working on?
Yeah, it's well, so when you say home runs, are you talking about experiences with members, or are you talking about
specific members, specific success stories? If you had a poster child for what this can do, just pick one.
Well, I'll give you an example that I mean, this I still get calls to this day from a friend Larry Weiser in Houston, and so early on he was a captive agent with Farmers. And it was one of their many hiccups where they were driving him crazy in Houston. So he got into SIAA with us, and he grew his independent agency. And when his son decided to go into the insurance business, he didn't want to go to work for Farmers. He says, "There's no way am I going to be contained to just what Farmers' products were." And we're going way back. This is before Chris. So this would be early 2000s. Anyway, the reason why I say a home run, I'm going to appeal to the people that want to make money and define it home run that way.
That's always a safe bet.
So he builds this agency on the side, and they had grown it, and they'd grown to the point to where their independent side very quickly was the same size as his retail side. And he sold his retail side back to Farmers, and then he doubled down on his independent agency. Well, his son was a commercial producer who decided, gee, I like this commercial stuff. And he started getting into big commercial accounts, 6-figure plus accounts. And so Larry and his son, Eric, were trying to figure out what did they want to do with the future. Well, So I talked to them about merging into our retail agency because they really needed the certified risk managers like regularly, and they needed a lot of stuff that that would really take them to a whole nother level. And unfortunately, on the short run, they were attracted away to one of the alphabet house agencies. Okay. So now they sold and we got bought out and they got bought out and we got a lot of money and they got a lot of money. Okay. But now they're captive for an alphabet house agency network. I'm not a network at all. I'm not going to mention their name, but it's one of the big four. And so now Larry has found a little niche that he works on, but he still calls me up. And I have another friend that sold his agency he built it up, bought out. It is over many years. It was his father's agency and had nothing to do with our network. And I'm going to come back to why the network is so unbelievably important. So he ended up selling because he got so frustrated that he was at the point to where for him to continue to grow, his agency was about 10 million in revenue. He says, Mike, I'm just trading dollars. Well, that's because he didn't build an entourage of other people. You have to build your army. You can't continue to be the general and the lieutenant and the sergeant. You got to start replicating yourself with other people, which he did not do. So he sold and got $20 million and went to work for this outfit. And the advantage to him now is he doesn't have to worry about being sued anymore because it falls on their shoulders. And so he is a regional president for them. And so I said, okay, so what are you going to do when you finally earn out, you've gotten all your money? You know what he's going to do? He's going to start another small agency. So I say that to say that with the network, you can operate pretty much forever. If you want to sell it to your kids, if you want to sell it to a third party, if you want to sell it to Chris, if you want to sell it to Coverica, I mean, all these possibilities that you have if you want to get out. But being a 70-year-old who will never completely retire, I got to tell you, the options to be able to continue to operate without the pressure of marketing reps and beating you up about you're not selling enough of this or that, and it's a wonderful life that you can have. And that's why Chris, when he said lifestyle, make as much money as you want, but boy, it's great to be with other people that have like and kind interests. And when you're meeting with the other 97 ISMs, heck, if nothing else, you may want to partner with one of them.
Or buy one of them.
I mean, it's when you understand the leveraging point of business from a different perspective, which is what we promote here, you can do good work, and it's noble work, and make a good living.
Yeah, and I would say it's hard for me to answer the question only because I have a handful of them, and selecting which one I want to go with makes it difficult. But I would put two up there. We had a member that was big time captive, around 800,000 in revenue on the captive model, and convinced them to transition. And in fact, actually, the recruiter that was in his office, he first threw out of his office and then called him back the next week saying, "Hey, can we talk outside?" and then asked us to come back. Well, his growth trajectory and everything that he's accomplished, what took him 10 years on the captive side took him 2 on the independent. So he's sitting at north of $2 million in revenue to this day. He's just grown like wildfire, and the growth coaches and everything it took him quite a bit to get to that point to be that big of a grower on the captive side. That and the independent side is massive. So that has been awesome. So really seeing that our top 10 partnerships are new to us within the last 4 years is pretty indicative of how we've transitioned with technology and the resources and value add that we bring. But one of my near and dear was probably Monarch Insurance. There's Kelly Rice and Andy Rice. They were, honestly, I think Kelly worked for Kemper, if I'm not mistaken, and Andy was an Allstate agent, did quite well. So she decided she was going to open up an independent, give her whack at that, leave the carrier side and go put her money where her mouth is and really go for a stretch. And watching her step into the marketplace really kind of, I think, jabbed her husband a little bit. He's like, no, wait a second, what are they doing over there? How does that work? I think he was coaxed. He was seeing what that looked like, all the options and availability and the resources that she had. That he's like, okay, this is ridiculous. And then I think ultimately followed her about a year and a half after, and to this day have done quite well. I believe they're just cresting about $1 million in revenue into their model and everything. So yeah, it's been awesome to watch them grow.
Wow, that's good.
I might have to get them to sign off that I can say that, but
I mean, free publicity is free publicity,
And I will say for both Kelly and Andy, the idea of concierge, really caring about their members, caring about their clients, their core values, how they hold themselves, is something I highly respect and admire and look for in prospective agents as well. So they're true to who they are.
Let's hit on that real quick before we wrap up. What are you looking for in those people who might join the team? Because it's not for everyone, maybe not just in the sense of what is brought to the table, maybe, but it's also who. There's a vision behind everything that Mike has built and everything that you're building. Go into that just a little bit.
Well, I mean, our core values, which are slightly different than Mike's 4 precepts, but are integrity. We want to have integrity in all things that we do. Service before self at all times. Innovation and finding a new way of doing things, and then excellence and execution. I stole that kind of from the United States Air Force. Doesn't fall far from my basic training days: integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do. That really, to me, really cares for the partnerships. Any relationship we're getting into, are we executing like that? And are our partners doing the same? So I look for those that value those same things and want to be successful, want to push, but also want to do it to the benefit of others, not just themselves. I'll definitely bring on somebody that is money hungry, but how are they doing it? The quality that comes along with that is equally as important as having that drive. And that's what I look for in a partnership.
I would add to that we are I'm going to go ahead and say it, we're kind of a beacon in how a business should run. Because somewhere along the road, people got this idea that, take care of number one and make as much money as fast as you can and get out as fast as you can, and how many people you have to step on and get over is inconsequential. And I would say that the opposite is actually a realistic goal, which is by doing a good job, you not only will you be helping other people, but you're helping yourself. And I've heard this from other people in my formative years that I belonged to a business mastermind for over a decade. And we would get together, about 18 of us, and each one had a different business. And we would peel back the layers to find out what made a company successful and what made it unsuccessful. And very often, the long haul view of building a business, of being successful, when you're a captive agent, you're being an agent selling products, making a living. So it's a one-to-one relationship, whether you're personal lines or commercial lines. When you become an agency principal, you're going to need people that can show you how to pivot and leverage. So that I used to say I'd rather have 5% of Coca-Cola than 100% of Coverica, which I owned for many, many years, because 95% of the stock is held by people that are fighting to make it work. So they're working together. So you will find that with the people that Chris has amassed in his departments or his company, these are people that really enjoy helping other people. I mean, like you have school teachers. They didn't get into the business to make a living. They got into the business because they love working with other people, with kids. So you have people that are really they're happy to see you succeed. And when you have more markets, here's the important part. When you're a captive agent, very often they teach you that we got to fight with your underwriter to get him to write the business. As an independent agent, you've got other markets that like that kind of business that you're trying to write. So you don't have to fight anybody. Just say, if you don't want to do this, we'll find somebody that does. And just that change alone will give you more energy to continue to fight the fight. So I would say that although Chris is taking it somewhat of a different direction to his own direction, the same core values exist, which is we are here to write insurance because it's a promise to pay in the event of the loss. And that's very noble because, like I said, I'm here in Florida. I'm seeing how people, they're going to hope that they got good insurance and not just the cheapest product. So the nobility of what we do, plus it compounds. They want to stay with somebody that they can work with. So when Chris mentions the concierge, what that really is, to just boil it down, is that your customers know that you really care and that you have enough markets to support them. And you're part of an organization that's been around, both the retail side has been around 40 years and SIAA, which has been around over 30 years. And so you're part of that. So you have immediate legitimacy, a history, and it just works. And so we want to show people that you can make a good living and take care of your employees and take care of your customers and take care of the carriers. And guess what? You made a lot of money in the process.
Well, we're coming up on the end of time. I know that on this show, we like to share things.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up the show with a share from each person on here. I'll go ahead and go first just to kick it off. So my wife and I were invited to see the performance of the Screwtape letters here in Dallas.
Oh, wow.
And it was something else. I had not read the Screwtape letters up to this point. I had gotten acquainted. I had started listening to Andy Serkis's performance, who I think is one of the greatest audiobook narrators ever. I'm listening to him do the Samarillion right now. It is educational.
Oh gosh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
You got all this light stuff that you're jumping in on.
Oh, yeah. But
I don't know. Does anybody? I don't know if our audience would understand what the Cimmerillion actually is. You have to be super Lord of the Rings nerds.
Good point.
Elven language.
Anyway,
it's the complete documentation of the Elven language, and it's I'm going to so
So thank Lord of the Rings and thank Encyclopedia, and then think, oh, hey, it's somewhere way past that on the difficulty scale. Anyway, back to the Screwtape letters. It was something to watch. It was one of the opening lines that really caught me was C.S. Lewis's equivalent to Mark Twain whenever he was writing a book, and it's like, oh yeah, don't persecute me for writing this. He essentially says, I'm not going to say how this came into my possession, but here's evidence that there's optimism in hell, just like there is in earth or in how things are portrayed. But it was something to see performed, let alone just to listen to. I'm looking forward to finishing it. The play was like 20% of what was actually written. He had to piece so much together. But it was a treat. There are going to be more performances here in Dallas by that same group. Highly, highly recommend it. And I'll go back to the Cimmerillion in the meantime.
It's very light read.
Very light read.
So bring it back to earth, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, so mine's a little bit more mainstream, although it still follows the C.S. Lewis line. I actually have it on my to-read list, was The Surprise by Joy by C.S. Lewis. I love the Screwtape letters, and I know way too much about the depression that he went through when he wrote it, just to fill in that. But getting back to reality, or rather not reality, but closer to home, The Surprise by Joy. I've been on a quest, if you will, in my own journey of after my divorce, after all these changes, becoming owner or managing partner rather. It's a lot, and I want to do it well. And so being joyful in those exchanges as those opportunities present themselves, being an encourager to my team, if I have a spouse, or if I have the opportunity to be married again, being a loving husband and a joy-filled person is my personal quest. So I try to do 2 business books and then 1 personal, kind of keep the balance. I'm not allowed to read business books before I go to bed, though.
Really?
I can't sleep after I want to do it.
Okay, yeah.
And so I start sending emails to my team, and they get upset.
Well, I'll tell you. So I'll go all the way down to now we're going. But so
Robert B. Parker.
Yes. So Robert B. Parker, and excuse me, but there's a TV show. My wife's a Tom Selleck fanatic. She'd leave me for Tom Selleck if he'd have her. and so we found him on. It's called a Jesse Stone series.
Yep.
And it's a really cool series that we started watching. Well, I liked it so much, and they only had like 5 of them. And so I found the author that wrote the original book, which is by Robert B. Parker. And this particular book she found for me is called Stranger in Paradise. And what is really cool about it is it's taking the Jesse Stone, which was the Tom Selleck character, but it's in a book that isn't one of the ones that we saw. Now, the first thing that I noticed that was really cool was when I would read the book after seeing the show, it was good. Now, don't do the reverse. I've done the reverse before. When you read a book and then you go see the movie, and the movie's just, oh, well, they didn't cover this and they didn't cover that. But if you do it in reverse, it's like, oh, this is really cool. They're which pieces they're picking out to make the movie on, you know where they're pulling it out of, and it's more gratifying. Well, when you read the book that hasn't even been made into a movie yet, it's really cool because you know all the characters. And it's about a 300-page book, big print though, so it's maybe a 200-page book. But anyway, so I'm having fun reading that. So this, boys and girls, is the bell curve from the early adopters to the majority of people, and for the people, late adopters. So in life, I'm at the other end. I'm now enjoying reading books like this. Don't need to read the business books anymore. Don't need to worry about how to build a business anymore. I'm enjoying just helping people. I guess I'm becoming a school teacher to where I won't make money like I used to, but I'm getting to help people. So that's kind of fun.
That's excellent. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this first episode of Agency Ascend. We release episodes every 3 weeks on Wednesday, so be sure that you tune in, subscribe, like, and share, and make sure that you never miss an episode. And until then, we will see you next time.